thankful to have everybody here tonight, for all of the educators, community members that are taking their time to learn in this journey together for all of our students. And what we did when we were brainstorming this idea of this series, we really wanted to look at, we really wanted to share our stories of how Indigenous students navigate their world, their education world, their identity world. And we wanted to help educators understand that a little bit more, because if you're not a First Nations student, you have no idea what those eyes see. And I know, going through the system myself, that it was difficult. It was hard. And if my teachers understood that a little bit more, I think that I would have had a better chance. We had to work very, very hard in that system that was built not for us. So much for joining us today. Ozawa Makunt's Nadijna Kaz, Beketranong Nadunjaba, Makwa Nadodam, I Kinamaga Zadendao, Minwa Nishnabek Kwandao. My English name is Jawan Shagnash. I come from Beketranong territory. I'm Bear Clan, and I am the special projects teacher for Indigenous Studies for the secondary program. This is my first year in this role. I was a teacher for 12 years. And I'm really excited to host this session and this whole series, because of just that knowledge of how I went through the education system and what we can do to help these students that are still going through this system, that are struggling, but those educators aren't fully understanding what those struggles are. So we're hoping this 2 weeks, we've had 2 great days so far. So this is the 3rd great session, a day that we're having, and it is going to be an amazing session. I've heard these ladies speak. So rather than me gab, let's get right into it. I'm gonna do their introductions. And we have Jodie Williams and Nancy Rowe presenting how non-Indigenous teachers can effectively and responsibly teach Indigenous students. Jodie currently works as the Indigenous Education Consultant for the Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board in Ontario, Canada, and is the co-chair for the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Education Association of Ontario. She is also the lead on a provincial community of practice for Indigenous knowledge and mathematics, which involves a collaboration with NASA, Maori educators from New Zealand, the Navajo Nation in the United States, as well as Anishinaabe and Cree. Jodie is also an instructor of AQ courses for teachers and has developed numerous resources in the areas of Indigenous education. Together, she and her husband have had 5 daughters and 1 granddaughter. Nancy Rowe is a Mississauga Ojibwe of the Anishinaabe Nation located in New Credit First Nation. Nancy holds an honors BA in Indigenous Studies and Political Science. She is an educator, consultant, and traditional practitioner of Anishinaabe life ways, views, and customary practices, and is currently completing a master's degree in environmental resource studies at the University of Waterloo. She is an avid volunteer who coordinates Ikinamaga Gamig grassroots initiative to provide educational opportunities for all peoples interested in Indigenous perspectives of life, health, education, and the environment. So we will have a question and answer session 15 minutes prior to the end of this session, and you can access that through the Q&A button on your screens. So I will just give the mic over to these lovely ladies to do their presentations for tonight. Miigwech and welcome.
Bonjour. G'day, Disnakas, Makwan Dodem, New Credit Reservation number 48 in Donchaba. Michizagi go to Nisnabe Koyandao, Titi Nendam. Hi, hello everybody. My real name is G'day. You could call me Nancy. And I really need to update my bio. I'm going to get around to that sometime. We're so busy all the time working in education, Jodie and I, that I don't have time to update those things. So It's really nice to be introduced by Zhawan. I guess we're sisters, eh? Both bear clans. So really happy to be here tonight, and I'll flip it over to Jodie, and we could maybe start a presentation.
Yeah, Ani Kinawea. Hello everyone. Can you I'm sharing my screen. I just want to make sure it is visible. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yep,
I cannot. Okay, great. Okay. So yeah, so we're gonna spend this time talking together. We're gonna give some examples about the work that Nancy and I have been involved in together. We've been doing, like Nancy was mentioned, working in this realm and for quite some time now. And we work in a variety of capacities. So as mentioned, I work as the lead for a school board in the region of Peel, just outside of Toronto. And we do a lot of provincial work as well with the organization called the First Nations Métis Inuit Education Association of Ontario. So, all right, so let's just get right into it. So I think, first we gotta really talk about the education system. And as we know, and Nancy will speak to education from her, well, she'll speak to that. But I want you to think about how we're doing education today and how different is it really in terms of how it's been done over the last century, really. What do we tell kids in terms of what they need to be successful? We're not really in the business to create free thinkers who are there to realize their gifts that they carry and and go out and be really proud of who they are. In fact, our education system is still very much a colonial tool. It's still an assimilation tool. And we really have to critically explore and understand the structures that are still at play, and how this impacts us as educators and how this impacts the students who are in our classes. So over to you, Nancy.
I guess so. I guess for what we're looking at tonight and around, what is a student experiencing in the system, and I guess as good Anishinaabe, I want to speak from my experience, and we have generations of residential school, and we can't forget that, and we can't keep that in isolation in thinking that does not somehow impact still today our relationship with school, our relationship. What do we think when we walk in that building? We also have this other system, this two-tier system. We have this system of federal school on reserve schools. And I didn't attend those schools myself, but my two adult daughters, they attended those schools. And I witnessed a lot of things there in the federal system. And then when they went off to the provincial system, so I'm imagining that down your way, London, Windsor way, that the same things are happening, that we have students that are coming from the reservation and perhaps a school there, and then they're being asked to transition into a provincial system, which I think it's important that we understand the difference between those systems. I think it's important that we understand the role. I don't want to say trauma, but that's the truth. The role that education has played almost as a right hand to colonialism. And I don't say that to be impactful. I don't say that to provoke emotion. I say that because that's the truth. The truth is for generations and generations, our children have been taken and they've been forced into a system that was created to not only get them to think differently, but to be differently. And it was not long ago, maybe about 2 weeks ago, if that, and it hadn't occurred to me it occurred to me something very profound that I would like to share with you here. And what it was that, Jodie and I, we spent a lot of time working. Last 12 years of my life, I've done this kind of work to try to help support educators and all the way up to the ministry to help support so that we could cause change across the education system, positive change. And it's always been so that positive change occurs in favor of Indigenous students, and trying to help teachers to do things differently, recognizing the knowledge gaps in history, recognizing that these things that we talk about today weren't actually things that we're educated about in that education system. And what occurred to me was that that system, we think about residential school system, that system went way far beyond trying to change the way that the students thought. It used a technique. It used the technique to shame the very being of the students. So everything about you, everything about my grandmother, everything about my husband's father, everything about those ones that attended there was not about how they thought. It was about who they were. So their very being. So when we're talking about the history of education, and this to me was profound because I'm always helping educators, and I'm trying to imagine, like, what are our students going through, and it didn't occur to me till just 2 weeks ago, in that what has actually happened to our societies for over, since the 1700s. What has happened to our societies if our generations have been consistently and profoundly shamed for who they are, not their level of intellect, but everything about them. And I share that with you as a teaching that I myself received. I know I have lots of work to do. I got lots of work to do because I've come to this understanding and saying, how do I help students now? And I'm not painting a picture that every Indigenous student that ever walks through the system is full of shame. But what I'm saying is that we have to look at those. We have to look at those things of the past, and we have to look at what they did and what they can continue to do, whether it's done intentionally or not. And so when our students are walking to your building, just the sight of that building could have an impact on them. The name of that building can have an impact on them. And I think we really do not understand the depths and the psychology of what education as a system and colonialism as a whole has done to Indigenous people and students. And I'm not trying to paint our people in a victim way. I'm saying this is the truth, this is the reality. And we need to hear that truth, and we need to hear that reality if we're going to respond effectively. And so I share that with you. I also want to share a piece about resilience. It didn't fully achieve what it wanted to achieve, because we still have, I was introduced by Anishinaabe, who spoke a little bit in Anishinaabe. So I don't want to give that system too much power. We are in this era now of revitalization and restoration of all the things that were systematically, legally backed to try to destroy our people and our children. And so I want to speak to that too. And I want to speak to, what are we teaching the students? And we have this term, Debwetmo and the truth. And what are we teaching students? There's a lot of sort of ego and ethnocentrism that occurs in this system. And we know that well as Indigenous people. We know that very well. We know what we're looking at when we're looking at a non-native teacher. We know we're automatically, because we are oppressed people, we are automatically placed in a subordinate and power imbalance, you would call it. And so it would be responsible of us to recognize and always be cognizant of that power imbalance that exists. That had a lot of impact on my own daughters going through particularly the provincial high school system, in that they would be consistently called upon because they were, they were the authentic Indians because we're ceremonial family and all those things, and they would be consistently called upon. And they felt obliged. They didn't have a voice to say, I don't think it's appropriate, miss, that I share with you about this. I share with you about my religious rights, or I share with you about my spiritual rights and things like that. And I think, in the slide, when we put this slide up, and I was thinking about, we have to position our relationship in truth and honesty, and say that we are in a relationship that is not beginning in a good way. And we have to recognize that. And what that tells me is that if we are going to reconcile, there are certain things that we're going to have to do. And one of those things that we're going to have to do is speak later to in the presentation. But we have to recognize our position as a colonizer and as a colonized. And we have to look at those things. Not personally, this is not personal between you and I. I'm talking about institutions. I'm talking about institutions. I'm talking about policies. I'm talking about laws. This is not about you and I. Okay, so don't take it personal. You know what I mean? But we have to look at it in the reality that it exists. And so our students have to, by law, go to these institutions, even though it may not be my desire as an Anishinaabe mother and grandmother. My desire would be not to send my child through that, not to send my child through this portion of what I call the colonial gauntlet, in order to protect them, because I'm a mother and I'm a grandmother, and I'm also a Bear Clan, and my concerns are with healthcare and justice. And I see the impacts. I see the detriment to the health of our students. I see the injustice that is being put on our students, and it scares me so much that I've actually leveled up and worked twice as hard. I have a 6-year-old grandson. He's going to be 6 this year, and I work really hard. I even come here 7 o'clock at night to talk to teachers here. Why do I do that? Because I want, wherever he goes to school, I want those teachers to cause as little harm to him as possible. I want to protect him. And so I guess that's where we start. And that's what I share about. We need to understand the history. We need to understand the truth, and we need to stand in honesty. And if we're going to address what's happening in education with Indigenous students. Did I talk too long? Oh, I talked too much.
So if we think about today, and how is our system different than when we look at what was happening with residential schools, for example, what language are we teaching kids in? Whose history is being brought forward and taught in schools? Who are the heroes and the leaders that are memorialized in school names or statues? Whose knowledge systems are put forward as being superior? So we have to really recognize, as well as what's still being brought forward in our school system. So a lot of things have to take place in order to make change. We have to really critically examine what's happening. And a lot of this, we're going to reference the work that's been done in my school board, because I can speak to that. And probably one of the biggest things that we've spent a lot of time with teachers is really understanding intention versus impact. Because I think, we have to right away move out of intention. Nobody wakes up in the morning with the desire of causing harm in their classroom. Nobody wakes up to say, okay, I'm gonna deliver the worst lesson plan and make kids feel bad, right? Like that, of course not. So when we find out, though, that perhaps what's being brought forward in classrooms We can't hide under the umbrella of, but I didn't mean to, because when you're in a human rights tribunal, intention doesn't matter. It's out the door. What matters is what harm was caused. So we have to really start to examine and understand impact. What is the impact that I'm doing? And in our board, we have and still have heaps and heaps and heaps of things which we would count as the romanticized stereotypes that we see very often in classrooms, that we've done a lot of work on in educating and informing people and explaining to them, why this is problematic, and then a very swift removal of or an immediate stop of those kinds of practices in the classroom. And so our conversations now are really around, what does upholding Indigenous rights and human rights look like in a classroom? How do we use that as a framework in creating systemic change, and also to ensure right down into our classroom spaces that those spaces are also upholding those rights? Back to you, Nancy.
What could I say about this slide? I think, what could I say? I think if we're looking at things as a system, as opposed to individuals and teacher-student relations, and then we're looking at these things more as a system, as the institution it is, I think fundamentally we have to change the relationship. We have to change this dynamic, however we have to do it. And I'll never, if you ever work with me, I'll never put up a slide that says do A, B, C, and D, and we'll have reconciliation. I never, ever do that, ever. And why that is because we have to dream that together. We have to understand, if I am causing an impact, who should I be talking to about that? What is the level of that impact? How is that seen as offensive? And so if we put some, if we put some forethought into building a relationship, a respectful relationship, we put some forefront into that and building the trust, then we can have these conversations about how can we change this relationship, this antagonistic relationship between Indigenous peoples in the education system. And so, Jodie started alluding to it when she's talking about using the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People as a framework for reconciliation. I presented earlier today to the city, and, the city wants to say, well, it's not legal, it's not ratified by Canada yet. And I said, I don't care. This thing outlines and educates us what Indigenous rights are. In that way, this is an excellent educative tool and guide to learn what are Indigenous rights, because most people don't even know. What are Indigenous rights? How am I going to know if I'm infringing on an Indigenous right if I don't even know what that is, if I don't even know that they exist? And so the UNDREP, and this goes back to a story with James Anaya and Sharon Helen Venn, some of the awesome people who actually worked on the UNDREP at the United Nations. And, they said, spill it in education, spill it into citizenry, educate about it. And so, I don't like getting caught in it. Well, it's not legal. No, we have a moral, ethical responsibility to ensure that we're not infringing on human rights, fundamental, basic human rights. But when it comes to Indigenous people, we also want to ensure that we are not impeding on, or infringing upon Indigenous rights. And those rights may vary. And so, if you ever take away anything that I ever say, talk to your treaty partner, work with your treaty partner, engage your treaty partner, because I will bet you that your treaty partner already has, they already have their own laws and their own ways of what they determine to be rights. And so, yeah, go ahead, Jodie.
So really thinking about, dignity, what does dignity look like? And if you think back on the other slide there, the other thing is for non-Indigenous teachers, there's a huge bias that people carry. And again, bias is things that have formed our perception of the world. So how we're raised, the media, social media, school, everything, all of that shapes our bias that we carry. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done to really understand and be able to start to see the bias that we carry. So there's lots of unlearning and relearning that has to happen. And that's the responsibility for educators, that this isn't going to happen in a webinar. This isn't going to happen by reading a book. This is a big, heavy journey that everyone has to go on. And what I love about working in education is that, the very nature of educators is like, we're very passionate about learning, bringing forward opportunities for justice in the classroom, and really awakening and empowering students. And so, this is another, the change that we've seen across the system has been really exciting. But it takes commitment, and it also takes the willingness to be humble, and also to learn that, that you may have things that I think about my own classroom practice, things that I have done, 5 years, 10 years ago. I would never even consider thinking about doing some of those things in my classroom today. And that's what we want to really start to see happen and transform as you go through this learning journey as well. And coming back to this UNDRIP as a really powerful framework in which our board actually has a policy now on Indigenous education, working in consultation with Nancy and other members of our Indigenous Education Council. And we really take this work seriously to make sure, because what this does at the end is it's protecting teachers, and it's also, most importantly, ensuring students aren't being harmed in the classroom. And so the other big piece is, and again, this is just some examples of what we've done in our board, but I'm sure, because I've heard wonderful things of Lambton Kent, is really bringing Indigenous students and creating the space and place and connecting them with what their birthrights are. And so, and listening to what families and the communities have to say in terms of what they want to see happening with respect to education. Anything you wanted to add to this one, Nancy?
No, just that, well, maybe just so people know where those ideas come from. And they're through collaboration with Jodie and I and things like that. And I remember the idea of I was thinking about reconciliation when it first came out. And I was thinking, what does reconciliation look like for my children or my grandchildren or my family? And I was thinking about, well, reconciliation from my Anishinaabe-centric lens would look like the revitalization and restoration, access and opportunity for our Indigenous students to access what should have been their birthrights. And so, in considering, we share that with you because that might be something that you want to consider down there. Is that, well, we're doing reconciliation like in a Western way. What are we putting back? What are we literally like putting back? And recently, Jodie's coordinated like an awesome language program. And that is what is born out of these ideas, is that they work so hard in residential school to take that out. Are we working to replace what was taken out? And so, that's the awesome thing about working with Duffer and Peel Catholic and Jodie Jodie, personally, is that these ideas or whatever they are, they come to fruition and we actually put them into practice. So I think a part of this, what we're trying to say, is that there has to be listening. We have to listen to each other, and we have to invest in this relationship, build the relationship. I don't know what level you're at in Lambton, Kent, but I see we have a little slide there on what we've learned from our experience about building the relationships. Oh, yeah, there we go. So there's a big story behind this. I don't think we have time, actually, Jodie, for me to tell the story. This is sort of where Jodie and I relationship began. I'm not sure how many years ago this was, but it was a great opportunity. She reached out to me as a quote unquote treaty partner, and had told me about some great things that her and her grade 12 class were doing around this mural that was informed by Isaac Murdoch. Maybe you know Isaac. Isaac sharing in the Fisher story, which is a lot about sustainability and, you know, very relevant today. And that my now sister, Christy Belcourt, was going to be in attendance at this little event that we were having. And so I was called and as a treaty partner, and I heard Christy was going to be there, and I was aware of that, walking with our sisters, eh? And I don't know if you're aware of that, you can Google it, but walking with our sisters to raise awareness around murdered and missing Indigenous women, because we weren't getting any justice or movement around that. And so, you know, I told some of my friends there in the background there, you know, I was asking around. I said, I'm going to see Christy Belcourt and this teacher. She wants us to come and help out and this and that. And so I put the word out, and I'd asked my one cousin, because we had a murder just around the corner from myself, and my cousin was murdered. And Jodie couldn't have known that. But so I reached out to my cousin, her sister, and the one that had been murdered, Elaine Ba. And I reached out to her sister and I asked her about if, you know, if Elaine's vamps had ever got to that installation. And she said, of course, they didn't know. They're very poor and shy, and they didn't even know about like walking with our sisters. And so I reached out to my other very good friend who has also passed, and she's in the picture. Her name is Deba. And she, that evening before I went up, I asked Lynn, my cousin, I said, is it all right if I can arrange for a set of vamps for Elaine to make it into the project? I'll be meeting the project coordinator, who's Christy Belcourt. And she's like, oh yeah. So Dee, that night, she beat it up. It's really beautiful vamps with a wolf, raised beating a wolf on those vamps. And I got to meet Christy, and we talked about, I asked Christy, you know, how do they do this? Is it in a good way? And, you know, all these things. And so I was on behalf of my family, and particularly my cousin, their family, I was able to present those vamps and have those vamps included in that installation. So why I'm sharing that with you is that you have no idea how maybe a small project such as this mural project could resonate. And so this was the beginning of our relationship. This was profound to me, that, you know, Jodie could coordinate, help, and support such an event that would have resonance, like literally in my family. And provide that opportunity. She could have said, no, you can't, you know, don't bring your friends, you know, like don't, you know, this is just an event for a mural, and you know, but she's open-minded and trusted. And we were able to cause literally some healing for a family in our community. And so that's how this Nancy and Jodie journey began.
And, you know, like this, I was a classroom teacher at the time. So anyone can do this. It doesn't, you know, obviously in the roles that I now work in, I have a bit more reach, I guess, in terms of being able to do things. But anybody can do, any classroom teacher can reach out and take the time, right, to also build these relationships too. And so what came of this, and this ended up becoming a resource, because after this whole project that took place, it was so powerful. And at the time, this is a school in Brampton. There was about, 2,500 kids. Like, it was a big school-wide initiative that went on for a couple of weeks. And it was really profound what the kids got out of this. And the whole idea was that it was Indigenous knowledge leading the way, Indigenous knowledge systems being the solution for what we're dealing with today. I mean, we're all here today in COVID as a direct result of abrupt climate change. And we have to really radically shift our conduct. And colonialism is directly tied in with climate change. And so, this is also an everybody, all hands on deck to move forward in a good way. So because of that, and the other big need, when, in a lot of the conversations that we've been having, we often say, like, just without, putting the $50 words on it, just stay out of the culture. Like, non-Indigenous teachers are not there to teach culture. That's not the job. That the culture is for the parents to teach their children, or the grandparents to teach the children, the community to teach the kids that. So so a lot of this, in terms of, and the resources that we develop, is to try and shift away from that, because that's, again, teachers that try to bring, oftentimes that's where you get into appropriation, mimicking, and all kinds of other problems. So this resource was kind of the first of several that came out, and it used this story as shared by Isaac. It's now been revamped in a fun animation to try and make it a little bit more interesting for kids. But the idea is, through Isaac telling that story, that knowledge that's being shared through that is then connected into a myriad of curriculum areas. And that's the job of the teacher, is to see where those natural connections lie, and using inquiry as the process, because inquiry is a beautiful process to explore something that, as well, you may not even know very much about either, as yourself as the educator. And so we are often telling teachers to go on a co-learning journey with your students. It's actually really powerful to show students your vulnerability with learning. It's completely okay to tell kids, I actually don't know a whole lot about this area that we're going to explore. So let's learn about it together. It actually invites students to take risks in their own learning as well in the classroom. And so this is a huge resource with heaps and heaps of links to it. It is elementary focused, although it did start in secondary, but there is 2 more iterations on this site since then that has lessons from the water, and a new one that we're slowly building, lessons from beyond as well. And again, the idea is that it's recentering Indigenous knowledge, but the teacher is not bringing that forward. The video content brings that forward for you. So are you okay, Nancy, if we skip a couple slides just because of time? Or do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, this is probably an important piece about maintaining the relationship. So it's one thing to engage in a relationship, and what I haven't shared with you is that what also governs these relationships is the privileging and using a model, an Indigenous paradigm. And so we're operating from Indigenous worldview. We're not operating from a Western worldview, and that's my job, is to bring that forward. and make those corrections, or make, make those, identify where there's problem areas and things like that. And so maintaining the relationship is critical. That's why I didn't want to skip this slide, because this is important. So if we're engaging in this relationship, we're held to different levels of respect and accountability. We've gotten into a relationship now. We listen to each other, we trust each other, and now we can speak freely. And so this is a really awesome thing about this relationship, is that when Jodie's gone too far, I can say, you're going too far, and she'll stop. She believes me. She doesn't try to negotiate with me. Nothing. She lets me self-determine my role in that relationship. She trusts my lens. She trusts what I'm saying. And the same thing, she could tell me too, and Nancy, you're going too far. I don't think she ever has, but you're going too far. Well, maybe you have in your own way, but that is how we operate, from honesty. And so I share that with you as a lesson, is that, if when you're in a stable relationship, you can have conversations like that. You can mention what your boundaries are. You can say, maybe we're taking this too far. Maybe we're doing this maybe in a way of integrity. And so if you go digging around looking at that untrip, you'll see some things in there around intellectual property rights. You'll see about self-determination. You'll see about, what's the other one? Duty to consult, all these kind of things. We are actually trying to play that out in our relationships. And we don't just say those things. We actually employ those things. So a lot of the products, I guess, that we create for FNMIEO, whether it's a teacher guideline or resource like that, it's important in that relationship, in that, if there were things in there that changed, everything that we do is a living document. Jodie is well aware of that. And it's a living document. So as we pick up our own history, Indigenous people, things may change. And I can go to Jodie and I could say, oh, that piece of that video has to come out now. We missed that. We overlooked that. But we have a responsibility, we change. And I know she'll do it like that. Right. And I don't have that kind of trust, maybe always with other partnerships or whatever like that. That is demonstrating integrity. That is demonstrating that this relationship is important, and we will be accountable. And we do that quite a bit more in the way of FNMIEO, because it's such public and it's provincial organization. And that's part of my job as a Bear Clan, right? Policing and security. And she understands that. And we listen to each other like that. And so that's why I didn't want to skip this slide, because I think there's some important elements in there around helping advising this group here tonight. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to skip to this one. Well, we'll skip back. We'll just kind of go back and forth. But so the FNMIEO, actually maybe back up if you don't know about that. So this is a place to go, because I know the number one question from teachers we always get is, where do I go to get resources? Where do I get content, or how do I, this is a really great place. And the work that we do is guided by a provincial elders advisory council, and basically everything that Nancy has said applies in the same format too. And again, the living document thing, I mean, we do this in other aspects of education. I mean, I hope so. Like we're not teaching in the same way. Well, I hope not anyway, that we were teaching 20 years ago. Like as educators, we are supposed to be reflective practitioners, always refining, adapting, changing. If you think about the first lesson plan you ever did, would you just stay in that very first lesson plan and that's the only way you would ever teach? No, of course not. You probably I don't know, I think about my first lesson plans and go like, oh my God, right? Like as a beginner teacher versus a 20-year teacher, you've refined your craft. So it's the same thing for all of the content that we put. If we feel it needs to come down or change or revise, then we do that. And so everything that we put out is also vetted to make sure that the information is just that. It's good quality information, and you won't find heavy emphasis on cultural practices, but you'll find lots of things on like this one right now. Actually, if you don't have a membership, I think Lambton Kent does actually. So Lambton Kent has a membership, so you can access all this. But this is the open site, and there's tons of just really beautiful videos. Again, so that it's primary sourced information. You're bringing the voices of the people right in. You don't have to teach about their perspective or their experience or their truths. You let them through this video format. And then there's lots of guiding questions and connections. And you'll start to notice if you're, I don't know where you're at in your own educational journey, but these common themes that are always going to be there, understanding that there are distinct, diverse, self-determining nations on these lands that have always existed and still exist today. Like Canada's not the only entity here. So that's a big one, connection to the land. There's all kinds of expressions of identity. So relationships and reciprocity. So these are these big ideas that you can start to bring forward. And the other big piece is contributions. So if you remember what Nancy was speaking about at the very beginning, we should be flooding our spaces with just incredible examples of beautiful, brilliant Indigenous peoples from all kinds of nations, the Anishinaabe Nation, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Mushkegowuk, Inuit. There's so many amazing people that, currently or in the past, leaders in all kinds of areas that we can be centering and bringing forward into our spaces. So we think about not just for, Indigenous students to see themselves represented, but for all students to see how incredible the people are. So I know I jumped, but we're also like at the Q&A time. So
yeah, I just want to add a little piece on that. Oh. In that, in designing your space and who should be in that space. And I'm just going to say it again, consult with your treaty partner, because they're the ones who were literally erased from the curriculum, erased from the land. And so we have a responsibility to bring them in. And they would be great to consult with. I don't know what your setup is down there in Lambton, Kent, but they would be great to consult with, to say, what role models would you like? What do you want to see in our school about you? What treaty do you want us to put up here? What chiefs do you want us to put up here? And that is a profound thing. It's a simple thing, but it's profound, because we're actually working against the erasure of the Indigenous people of that very land. And so, reach out to your treaty partner, reach out to your lead who may already have those relationships in place, and have a conversation around what should we be putting in our school? What does the treaty partner want all students to know about them? What is important to them? And I think that's a great place to start. I just wanted to add that little tiny piece on here, Jodie.
Yeah, for sure. So that's basically in our school board, how we operate. We say, ask. If you're not sure, just email and check in. Ask first. Also, listen to your gut. If you are thinking like, if something speaks to you deep down where you're like, I don't know about this, you're probably right. You're probably doing something wrong. So reach out and just check in first. I can't tell you how many times just from people emailing and asking, huge problems have been prevented. And then it's really great learning opportunities as well, right? Because then we can have a conversation and explain it. And then, they're like, oh, wow, yeah, now I see that. I didn't see it before, but now I see it. So just check in is like
check in before it gets to Twitter.
Yes. And then, yeah. And then now it's really nice to see, people are, some of the stuff that's happening now is just really, really incredible. And it's exciting. So thank you so much. And I know we said we would save some time for questions. That's our contact information if you're interested. And yeah.
Yeah, good. Fast and furious.
We did it.
Oh, Chimmy Gwetch, that was awesome to go so quickly. And your message of what really stood out to me was in the beginning, you said, our education is a colonization tool and an assimilation tool. And you're exactly right. We are putting our Indigenous children in this system that is not made for them. And if we go with that mindset, we can kind of understand and look for other avenues to empower our students. And I remember going through and I had to play the game. That's what I called it.
Mm.
I had to figure out what the teachers were wanting from me. I didn't connect with it, but I had to figure out what they were asking, and I played their game and I gave them what they wanted and I got the marks. And I got through their education system that didn't mean anything to me, but I jumped through their hoops. So Miigwech for sharing your knowledge. And if we have any questions from any of our educators today, please post in the question and answer.
Ask anything.
Yeah, don't be shy. This is your time.
Anything. Yeah.
And this is the time now, since we have these knowledge keepers and we have the people who've done it, please ask. Because there's no stupid question. If you think it, somebody else probably thinks it, and it will only help our students.
I don't know about a knowledge keeper. I'd say I'm a system shaker. Call me that.
There you go. Perfect. But you help filter Nancy in and do all of those things. And we do have one that popped up. We said, what is the most common thing you have had to take out of classrooms?
So I'll tell, so for in our, I can only, so in our board, we had to do some big interventions, and we actually produced a resource around this in terms of a lot of the crafting, like the crafts, like dream catchers, toilet paper roll totem poles, things like that. And again, this is what I mean by like the intention and the impact. So the teachers weren't intentionally trying to do things wrong, but they didn't understand the problem and how it was being received doing this. And so we put together a resource. We created some videos explaining like why it's problematic doing that in the way that it was happening, and why it just had to stop. And the other big piece that's unique to, because we're in a Catholic board, was we have a world religions course, and in that course there was these bins that had been sent out 15 years ago, but they were still being used. And in that course there's a unit called originally it was Aboriginal spirituality, then it was named Native spirituality, and then FNMI spirituality or Indigenous spirituality. Anyway, and it was literally the bin of appropriation. But beyond appropriation, it also had some significant ceremonial items in there that had like that no place in a public setting. Like it was really, really problematic. So, right away we said, okay, those are out, they come. We had to repatriate back some of the items. They were that serious. But, and then we said for that course, you're not teaching that. That's not going to happen. You don't teach that. We actually substituted a unit out saying that in that particular course, if you wanted to teach, you could teach about the papal bulls, the doctrine of discovery, terra nullius, and how religions have impacted Indigenous peoples. And in knowing all of these truths, how do we then move forward in reconciliation? And what could that look like moving forward? So a radical shift in terms of the approach of what was happening in education.
Oh, I had a smarty pants answer, so I'm not gonna answer. what we should take the whole class out of there and get them on the land. That's my smarty pants answer. We
Yeah.
don't even need the classroom. There's another question there.
Exactly. Yes, there's another question. It says, how much of what you are presenting about is being taught at our teacher education colleges, i.e.
Oh,
Outhouse
man.
at UWO?
That's our next we need to address that, because yeah, there's a huge problem with what because it's like, yeah, the faculties need a big intervention.
Mm,
It's a huge, and like this speaks to, like, this is where, when we talk about structures, right, and it's decision making tables, who ends up, because we live in hierarchies in our colonial institutions. We have a hierarchy of decision making, right? So I know I worked at the College of Teachers, and I saw firsthand how that operates even there. And then in our interactions at the ministry, and even in our own school board, at the end of the day, it's still a non-Indigenous, most often white male at the top, making those fundamental decisions in terms of whose voices, or who's informing those decisions, or who even gets to a table, let alone have a say in something. And so that's why we have to tell teachers, you can't even trust the curriculum, because you think, oh, well, the ministry put it out. The ministry would have, of course, the ministry would do things in the right way. Unfortunately, no, it's not happening. And so so you have to be careful, and you have to develop a critical lens to be very, you can't trust anything that gets put out. And so, yeah, I think if we need to radically change how teachers are taught at the faculty level, because it'll certainly make our jobs a lot easier, trying to change classroom practice, 10, 15 years in, rather than, if teachers that went in got a real strong foundational understanding, it would just make, I think, people's lives easier.
I want to mention too, Jodie, that, like I work from grassroots, and I want to mention too that, like, we recognized that issue long ago when Jodie was working at OCT. It was so frustrating. The things that were getting passed through and considered, content that was teachable. It was shocking, even for me, some of the things. And so, but we took a proactive approach to that too. And Jodie and I locked ourselves up in a motel room for days and days. And we literally, like, we co-wrote a high caliber 3-part AQ course that would not have any of what we're seeing come out of these institutions. And that, in part, is why we did that. We wanted something of high quality, of authenticity, that really actually privileged Indigenous voice. And, I literally just like talk, and somebody would type, and we came out with a really awesome AQ course because of that problem. So, we can sit around and wait, but I don't know how long that's gonna, but when we think about harm and harm reduction,
don't wait for the government.
we got to get to work. And so I advocate for both levels. Like, it's easy for in colonial systems to blame the top, and, oh, we'll ask an Indian how long you got to wait, well, we wish the government would do something different. We're still waiting, eh? And so what we do is we take matters in our own hands, and then and do something here on the grassroots. It's going to lay impact sooner. And the hope there is that those things will scale out. And I mean, my gosh, Jodie, we've reached the whole province. We've even gone international with some of the things that we've done at grassroots level. So, there's a lot of power here down on the grassroots or frontlines level, like you as an educator. So don't let things up there, limit or, limit you. There's things we can do right here on the ground.
I see somebody was asking, I think it's this slide that you're asking to see again.
Yeah.
I believe it
Building
was this one.
relationships. There you go.
Yeah.
And that relationship that you guys were talking about, right there, talking about reconciliation, about dreaming it together. So you guys are just showing what you guys can do with that dream together, that relationship of trust, and how, you know, it can't be defined, but with that relationship that you guys meld together and help, like you said, globally and starting from grassroots. Don't sit around and wait. Miigwech, that was a really good answer. I appreciate that. So there's the slide that was asked for. And there was another one. I agree with that we need to be out on the land more, not a smarty pants comment at all. I wonder how we can get more of that into place.
Go out on the land. Just do it.
Just do it.
You just gotta do, yeah, like that's the thing too. Like, I mean, I've been a classroom teacher, a department head, I've worked at the College of Teachers, I'm at the board office. Like, we live in barriers and like, you know, every time we want to do something, it's usually no, there's heaps of paperwork, like, you know, there's excuses all the time. But if we just roll over the first time we're told no, nothing will ever happen. So you don't take no for an answer. Like, never take no for an answer when doing the right thing for kids. If you know, you just find a way. There is always a way. It might not, I'm not saying like none of the stuff that I've been involved in has been easy. It has not been easy, but there's always a way to find, you know, when you want to do something, there's always a way to make it happen. So I think it's, yeah, like go on the land, make it happen, just go.
Yeah. Like you said, use your gut, feel what's right and do it. Miigwech, ladies, I appreciate all your knowledge tonight. And, you know, what I kind of got out of this was, you know, what you're talking about empowering our students. And rather than jumping through those hoops or sitting there not being seen, is that as educators, we need to empower all of our students. So if educators can take a little bit away today of understanding that a little bit more and just seeing that picture of that smudging taking place and that drumming happening or being out on the land, that's what empowers our people. That was our original education system. And if we can do that more, then our students will find purpose, will find empowerment within themselves and be able to be successful. So miigwech, ladies, I appreciate all your sharing tonight, taking your evening out to help Lambton Kent. And I appreciate all the teachers and educators of Lambton Kent who took the time out tonight. And I just want to say, miigwech, we appreciate it. And we hope everybody has a great evening.
Miigwech.
Bama piminwa.
Bama P.